final program for my CIT 63 Java class. So let me just get straight into it. So this is the few of the files I'm starting out with. You can see up there. So the Zero Habitat.txt is actually going to be the document that my file prints into. I'm sorry, that my Java prints into. But in any case, I've actually deleted this area already, just to show you that it's going to start fresh with nothing printed in. Here are the original files as provided for the class. So the class requirement for this final course is that these files were should be read in and then sent through your program, run it through to get all these elements, and eventually to have them print them out in the specified format. And actually, let me see if I have that specified format. No, I don't. Over here, but it don't matter. Okay, so now on to the demo. So this one also was the suggested starting point. With the midterm, though, for example, we had a suggested starting point, and then also we were offered a solution. But in this case, though, so we just had the starting point, the suggested starting point. So you actually see the suggested code here that we're supposed to build from. So it actually starts the final program actually with creating the linked list here, and then we go with this suggested code. Then we go straight into a scanner, and then from scanner we're actually just literally just parsing out straight into what's going to be created here and a new object for some of this parsed information here. Um, Given that the code is relatively easy the way it's built here, I couldn't wrap my head around how I was supposed to use what I had previously and try to get things working. Like for instance, I mean here like the file writer is literally just like at the end of the code. So let's just go straight into my refactored code. So again, I this is code that I pulled from the midterm because the midterm was actually kind of similar to this final program. We're using similar text files, almost if not the actual copies are identical to text files. Text files. It's just the format that's printed out is supposed to be parsed in and printed out a little bit differently. So given that, I start out with actually a couple functions. So here I'm starting out my program. I'm giving a couple functions, for instance, generate birthday, so and generate unique ID. I mean, these were all existing functions in my midterm. They're straight from the solution code that was provided to us already in class. They turned out to be worthwhile functions for me. Of course, I had written them out in a format. Just I used arrow functions instead of the other fully notated functions. So I go straight into my main from there after declaring a couple functions. And the reason why these are up here is actually because they're going to take a couple different data elements or string elements or integer elements and actually create or generate that unique information that we're going to need later. So from here, I thought it would be a good idea just to show that I conceptually understand what's going on with objects. Is I started to create a couple blueprint classes, just so that I can place my documents. So these original documents are literally just being sent straight into this class here. And then these right here are actually going to be the call them the variables that I actually use in the later code. So this pretty much this right here is essentially just to get this file into my code, and then everything is going to be parsed into these and then sent out to the rest of the stuff to be sent to my other elements. So from there, I do create a blueprint for animals. So this is just a class. So eventually, each animal, eventually this class will be used to create an object for each animal. As you can see, so, this the way my code has it printed out. The way my code visualizes things, you can see that some are used and some aren't, and that just had to do with just going through the code, refactoring, and kind of just seeing what I really needed and what I could actually do without. So here we go straight into the linked list from creating some of those classes. So again, these are initial object classes or initial objects that I considered. They were pretty much saying, "Hey, here's my goal. This is what I need to start this program." Okay, and of course these are objects in themselves. The linked list. Okay, and here I'm going straight into just printing out and saying this is where my code, where my program begins. So in my midterm, I actually used scanners and buffered readers, but here I just decided to use scanners because I did fix some ongoing issues that I knew were in my midterm. For instance, the animal names scanner actually completely scans this document, animal names, and the result actually gives me a split. So of course I replaced some text here, but it actually gives me a split, and I get an array almost straight from the scanner for animal names. And of course, arriving animals actually was the easier document to pull in, so nothing too fancy there, just simple lines, and pretty much I'm printing out everything that you see down here. The initial code is just pretty much just printed out straight from the scanners. So okay, let's begin. So I put everything. So even all my anything that's going to come from my object, maybe not the documents, but anything that's going to be put into this object here, I actually start my writer first, and that's something that's way different in comparison to the code that we got to work with. I just decided that once I start doing the work, I'm going to start doing the work. So I begin my writer right there. And then I declare some other classes, some more objects. So here I have, so all my dates are going to be pulled from this information here. All my integers, so anything I foresaw as an integer that I might use or might not use, I have now coded it into this area. And then I also did the same thing for all strings. So, you'll see as the code goes on, it may look disordered, but the reality is like what I was thinking is, well, if I'm going to have to create objects and link and put those objects in the linked list, I'm like, then maybe I should give some objects for everything I want to uh, send to those other classes and linked lists. So it just made me the thought process easier to kind of put everything in strings here. I'm sorry, everything in objects, and I have one of my objects is for all strings. Okay, so as you can see from here, this portion of code actually was initially from my midterm, so I just decided to actually send the scanner straight into this variable here. So string ID equals docs names. You'll see it's up here pretty much, and so that docs names is going to pretty much be the result of everything after my scanner, and then I'm just saying that into a variable that I can work with, just to make it easier down here. Okay, so straight from there, I realized that I needed to parse everything out into an array, so that's what I did. I split everything into an array called split text. Okay, so that resulted in, it's actually not 52. Uh, Technically, it's a smaller array, but I just decided, what, I don't want to ruin my code. Like I said, I'm a little superstitious, given that I had such code failures, cataclysmic code failures, where I've literally had to restart this whole thing maybe once or twice, too many times. So from there, I actually use for loops. So I'm saying between integers and integers j. This is literally like the j index. Normally you use I first, but I just decided to use j in this instance for animal names. Okay, so for out of this 52 index, it's technically probably about 49. So out of that 49, the first 13, essentially, it says for index 0 through 13. I'm telling it to index the first one to string habitats or string habs. So I'm sending that 0 index to, and that's pretty much for the habitat name. You see down here, but when I rewrite it, you'll understand. Okay, and then the actual name, so this portion here, I'm actually sending two strings hyenas. Okay, and that's pretty much, that'll be repeated for pretty much each habitat respectively. Okay, so from there, then I just print out these are the names, blah, blah, blah. Outprint. Oh, so there, yeah, just had to take a second to remember what I was doing here. So here I'm actually selecting the names. This is literally where I'm selecting the names that I'm going to use, and I'm telling you these are the names for the habitat there. And again, that's just repeated. It's just everything's repeated or copied, but given the proper names and set to the proper habitats. And actually, that's the finished part right there. So it actually takes care of all the animal names. So it was a 49 index. Yeah, it was 49 length index. That was just pretty much parsed into two separate arrays, one for the habitat names, and then one for the actual names. Okay, so from here, this is just midterm code. I'm not even going to discuss it because um, essentially what I've done is I did a lot of trial and error during the midterm. And I said, you know what, this the code is just I could refactor, but I'm like, if it works, I really didn't feel comfortable enough saying, I'm gonna try to rehash this. I did a lot of testing though, as you can see. I mean, each printout is just I went line by line just to make sure I was getting the data that I needed. So as you can see, each string is in a class string. So I'm sending these various elements that are split from the arriving animal's information, and I'm just sending it to that class. Just send, 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 send. Okay, and then from there, I come into a point where I'm actually generating. I'm using some of those functions, and I'm generating the information that I need. As you can see here, so this is actually where I get into the point where I'm going to use the class. So this is really where that refactor comes into play, where the class is going to create each animal as a new object, and then each object is going to be sent to that linked list. So here you go. This is the first example. This is one of the linked lists, and once I'm adding all these elements in, you can see strings, strings, strings. So I'm pulling all that information from the strings, and I'm sending it now to that class to be associated with the object that will be associated with the habitat right there. And that happens pretty much for each habitat, each lion, tiger, bear. So it is a lot of repetition. This is something that we had more time and put in a little bit more effort. You could probably get really, really keen, really could try to consolidate this code and refactor it even more. But in a sense, actually, that's literally pretty much almost the end of my code. Because then we get to a point where I'm sending each habitat through a for loop. So essentially, as you can see, so each animal object within each habitat, for each of those elements within that element, it's going to print out, and I'm actually output.write. So this is going straight to that document that I'm referring to up here. There we go. So right here, so my file writer says viewhabitats.txt, and you'll see that it is blank right now because I already cleared it out. Oh, and this is all just crappy code that I like to keep to remind myself how far I came to get an end result. So you'll notice here, originally I did state that my animal names were actually parsed into two or split into two separate arrays. Well, for whatever reason, it just turned out that the habitats, which is supposed to have a total of 4 indexes, one for hyena habitat, one for lion habitat, pretty much just the names, the actual names of the indexes. I was actually not successful for whatever reason. The split, so string halves only ended up with the first hyena habitat index 0, or the first index. So for whatever reason, these habitat names actually don't get sent to that habitat. So um, as a matter of fact, you can clearly see it there. So it worked for this one. It didn't work for these. So I said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to leave it as is. And if I have to, I'll just adjust my code. Given that this final was for a single solution to try to pull these two, read these two text files in and print them out in the desired format, I said, you know what, that's a worthwhile solution. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, so as I mentioned before, you can see that a few things are declared before I actually get before I print anything out or state on my program's beginning. So once those are declared, it says welcome to MacBank's program for creating habitats. I'll be using the following info, and it reads those two documents in. There are a couple things I did notice, like for instance, I do have some new line characters that for whatever reason aren't being read in, and so normally I would have a couple spaces here in between this information, but I said, you know what, it gets me the solution I need, and maybe in a later date I can go back. So here we go. Let's begin creating habitats. So this is where I show that I'm literally just out of that 49 index array, I'm literally just taking 4 names out of each of those. So you can clearly see right here where I was referring to before. Um, the first index for that array that just has the habitat names actually holds habitat hyena. Well, for whatever reason, the names for the other ones are just null. I left this as is, and I didn't choose to just print out the hyena habitats and pretend like I had the info. Only to show you that the end result is still there, and I did have to make some adjustments, but you'll see in the end result, the document that gets printed out. So you can see how each element from arriving animals was parsed out into strings or split, and then sent to the various classes. So then from there, literally everything is printed out from this single line. So everything that you're seeing here is literally just that single line printed out after everything is sent to the class here, or it's sent to be an object using class animal. So this is literally just all the information from that object. As a matter of fact, see, there's already one thing I noticed that I'd like to change. Where is it? Wait. Huh, fancy that. Anyways, okay, you can see, so I don't print out the habitat names here. Again, that just had to do with a little bit of error in my code. But you'll see that the end result is as expected. So you see each animal has a name, and so BE01 for bear one, bear two, and then I just a little counter that was originally from my midterm. I said, I like that. All right, but now here is the printed out document. So as you can see, created habitat enclosures, new animals for the following habitats. So for hyena habitat, you have HY01, Shenzi, 4 years old. Birthday is 3/19/2019. Tan color, sex is female, weight is 70 pounds. And so that just iterates again from those for loops that you see here. So it's literally just everything is pretty simply and easily printed out, and the document is readable. All right, that's the end of my program. Thanks for staying in tune.